I was 35, standing by the windows on the 21st floor, watching the headlights crawl over the bridge. Late fall, near 5 o'clock, and the river below looked like a strip of orange glass cut too sharp to touch. People in this building call me the steady one, Mr. Morgan, if they're being formal. The guy who took over a fading janitorial supply outfit and turned it into something worth a second look. They see polished shoes, clean lines, tight contracts. No one ever asks if I was hungry once. They wouldn't believe it anyway. My shirt fit right, my tie was solid, and the pen in my pocket cost more than my childhood rent. But sometimes, some days, I still heard the wind whip off that empty road. I passed by the old part of town this morning. There was a boy leaning against the pawnshop doorframe, arms crossed, jaw clenched, like he was daring the world to blink first. He didn't look more than 13, but he had that look, like hope was costing him something. Quick note, before we start, share in the comments, how's your day going and where are you joining from? And let's continue. That look punched a hole in my gut, because I knew it. I knew the weight of waiting for something to shift, some break, some sign. People think you climb far enough. The past just lets go. That's a lie. It hangs back like smoke. Doesn't choke you every day, but you catch it when the light hits right. I didn't end up here by chance. I held on when everything else wanted me to let go. And if I'm telling this now, it's not because I want praise. That kid outside the pawn shop reminded me of me, like he was waiting for someone to prove the world isn't always cruel. This isn't a victory speech, it's an invoice, a list of what it took, what I lost, and what I won't give back. My name's Caleb Morgan. The first time I figured out what a real family felt like, it came from a man I'd never seen before. He wore a threadbare coat and handed me a roll without asking my name. Before that, I had a father who could drink a room mean, and a stepmother who weaponized silence. I had a little sister I swore to protect, even when I didn't know what protection looked like. And I had one night, off County Road 7, abandoned service station, bitter wind. That still shows up every time the city goes too quiet. So yeah, I've got a story. And I'm done telling it to myself. I grew up in a third-floor walk-up that smelled like smoke and old beer. The stairs creaked like they were warning you not to come up. Our place had one couch, one working burner, and walls so thin you could hear the neighbors breathing, let alone shouting. But our noise drowned theirs most nights. My father, Grant, called me dead weight. So often I started to answer to it. He'd grab the collar of my shirt when rent came due, shake me like I was hiding 20s in the seams. Didn't matter that I was 10. Didn't matter that I hadn't eaten yet. If I flinched or stepped back, he'd bark louder, ask if I was getting soft. My mother was already floating in and out by then. Pills, maybe heroin. Nobody ever said it outright. She'd smile 1 second, glassy-eyed, then knock over a chair and cry because she couldn't find her purse that was in her lap. One night she forgot Amber's name. That hurt worse than anything my father ever threw at me. Amber was 3 years younger. I kept her behind me when things exploded, back pressed to the drywall, my palms over her ears while I counted to 50 out loud. Not for her, for me. Because if I could hit 50, it meant we made it through another one. Food didn't come from the fridge. It came from a dumpster behind Torres Bakery, or a produce crate some bored clerk looked away from just long enough. I got good at stealing without looking scared. You can't hesitate when you're hungry. That gets you caught. Or worse. One afternoon, after I mouthed off and Grant boxed my ear hard enough to make me see stars, I sat on the curb with blood in my spit. My cheek buzzed like it had bees in it. That's when the old man showed up. He had white hair like snow that stuck, eyes that didn't flinch when they met mine. He held out a roll wrapped in a napkin, still warm. He didn't ask my name, didn't try to sit, just said, "Eat, son," like it was nothing. Like I wasn't sitting there with my face lit up red and a bruise blooming under my eye. After that, he kept showing up. Quiet. No speeches. He left things, shoes that fit, socks that didn't itch, coins for milk, crackers in a paper sack with a folded note that just said, "Tomorrow." I never saw him do it. Stuff just appeared. One night, sleet came down sideways, wind howling like it had teeth. Amber and I huddled under a busted awning behind the dollar store. I was ready to run us to the bus depot when I saw his coat flap around the corner. He knelt down, unrolled an old army blanket, and shook it out like he was trained for this. Found a wall where the wind eased up and wrapped us in it. I didn't trust him, not then. but I started watching the street for him anyway. He was the only one who looked at me like I wasn't a problem to fix or a bill to pay. The rest of the time, I moved small. I learned to breathe light, stay quiet, be useful or invisible. Darkness became a skill set. But every night, before sleep, I'd tell myself one thing: hang on long enough to get Amber past that door, whatever it took. I held on for Amber because that was the only thing that made sense, but the house didn't care about sense. It just kept grinding. The day everything cracked open started like any other. Noise, stale air, and a morning already too dark. I walked into the living room and saw my mother on the floor, her body twisted, her eyes wide like she'd tried to catch one last thought and missed. The needle told me the rest. I didn't shout. I didn't touch her. I just stood there until my legs stopped shaking. Amber came up behind me and grabbed my hand so tight my fingers went numb. She whispered, "Is Mom sleeping?" I pulled her face toward mine and said, "Look at me, Amber. Don't look over there." She kept asking questions I couldn't answer, so I told her we were going to sit on the fire escape until someone came. The cold felt cleaner than the air inside. Grant didn't show a hint of shock. He glanced at the body and muttered, "She did it to herself." The same way he'd comment about a chipped plate. No funeral worth anything, just a trash bag, a call, and the door shutting behind two men who didn't make eye contact. I wanted to break something, but anger inside that house was a flare. You lit it, you got burned. A few months later, he brought home Lila, thin woman, sharp nose, voice like she'd swallowed gravel. She didn't raise a hand to me, but her words could cut through drywall. She slapped a ledger on the fridge and said it was to keep things fair. She tallied every meal to the penny. She wrote down chores like debts. She'd tap the paper with her nail and say, "Nothing is free, boys, not even seconds." When I asked once for more pasta, she said, "You two are expense lines. Be useful or be gone." Grant's hits changed too. Less wild, more deliberate. More like he wanted to leave marks where they'd matter. One night he smashed a glass, blamed me for it, and drove his fist into my gut so deep I couldn't breathe. I curled around the pain while Amber hid behind the couch, shaking. After he left the room, I patched the cut in my side with tape and a dish towel. She asked why he hated us. I told her to focus on brushing her teeth. Days turned into markers, school lunches I could count on, or rare evenings when the hallway stayed quiet long enough for us to fall asleep without jumping. Every small thing the old man left for us felt like someone throwing a rope down a well. I didn't know his name. I didn't ask. I figured if he wanted me to know, he'd say it. By 13, I knew staying meant we'd end up buried under that roof, one way or another. I hid my anger deep, past the bruises, past the hunger. Showing it made me a target. Saving it made me someone with a plan. And the plan was simple: keep Amber alive, keep my head low, and wait for the crack in the door that would let us run. I kept watch that night and pressed my ear to the hallway, listening for the next opening to move us 1 inch closer to getting out. I heard the engine before I heard my name. Grant yelled from the stairwell, "Ride with me!" like it was an offer instead of a command. Amber was halfway through a bowl of cereal, dry, no milk, but she grabbed her coat the second he looked at her. I didn't ask where we were going. I just made sure she had shoes on. The night was mean cold, sky like wet steel, wind pushing against the windshield like it wanted in. Grant lit a cigarette with the window cracked, and Lila hummed like she was bored. No one said a word until the road turned gravel. That's when I knew something was wrong. We pulled up to an old gas station off County Road 7. One working bulb swung from a broken wire. The pump sat dead, and the sign overhead was missing 2 letters. The building leaned like it was tired of standing. Grant threw the car in park. Lila twisted in her seat, smiled like she was handing out candy, and said, "Stay here and learn some independence." The doors slammed before I could speak. Taillights vanished down the road, and the night swelled up around us. Amber's hand slipped into mine. Ice cold. She whispered, "They're coming back, right?" I told her yes, lied through my teeth. Hated myself for the way her shoulders relaxed when I said it. We sat on the cracked concrete beside a vending machine that hadn't worked since I was in diapers. The wind came through every hole it could find. I curled around Amber the best I could and kept my eyes on the road. I counted cars. I counted breaths. Mine kept speeding up. Hers kept slowing down. Then the old man came. He stepped out of the dark like it was his own front porch. Same coat I'd seen before, same calm eyes. He didn't say anything at first, just took his coat off and wrapped it around both of us. He knelt down and looked me dead in the face. "Come on," he said, voice low and even, like this wasn't the first time he'd found kids freezing on the edge of a bad night. We didn't ask questions. We followed. His truck groaned but started. The heat wheezed out slow and dry, but Amber reached her hands toward the vent like it was gold. I sat in the middle and didn't look behind us. If they came back, they could shout at the sky. His house sat back behind a row of old maples. The porch creaked, the door stuck, and the kitchen smelled like something real. Lamplight hit the table. A quilt rested on the couch. It felt lived in, not staged. He poured soup without asking. Amber ate like she hadn't in weeks. I stared at the bowl for a minute before I gave in. Pride didn't fill your stomach. After, he handed Amber a blanket and showed her where to lie down. Then he turned to me. "Get some rest. You're safe now." I didn't believe it. I curled up near the fire with one eye open, waiting for the trap, waiting for the angle. But all I heard was the fire popping, and the old man in the next room humming something slow and steady while he fixed the leg on a chair. I woke to the smell of something warm, and the kind of quiet that didn't need my guard up. Morning light slid across the floor and showed dust drifting through the calm. The old man sat at the table with a chipped mug of tea, his fingers wrapped around it like he'd been thinking for a long time. When I stepped into the room, he lifted his eyes, and I could tell he had made a choice. "I'm Earl Whitaker," he said, steady but strained. Then he added, "I'm your grandfather." And that part landed like it cost him years to say it out loud. He motioned for me to sit. I did, because my legs didn't trust themselves to stand. He explained the names slowly. I carried my mother's last name, Morgan, because she didn't want Grant's name on us. Grant Whitaker, his son, was the man who'd left Amber and me on that freezing slab of concrete. Earl watched my face, maybe waiting for me to shout, but all I felt was something loosening in my chest. I told him I didn't even know grandparents were real for us. In my head, our family was 3 names in a cramped echo chamber. He nodded like he understood exactly what that felt like. He started talking about the shop he used to run, janitorial and safety supplies, steady business, nothing flashy. Then he talked about the son who burned through every dollar he touched. Grant had spun a story about mob debts, made Earl and my grandmother sell their house, their trucks, and loan money they didn't have. Then he disappeared, left them with nothing but explanations that never added up. Grandma passed a year later. Earl said her heart wore out, and he didn't mean it metaphorically. After that, the shop shrank, the house went, and he lived on what he could scrape together. Even then, he kept an eye out for us where he could. He said it softly, like he didn't want to scare me off. The bread, the shoes, the coat, every small mercy I thought came from luck had been him. Always close, never stepping in because Grant threatened him with trouble if he came near. Earl cleared his throat, said seeing us abandoned at that station felt like a door finally unlocked. "I am not leaving you again," he told me. His voice didn't shake, but mine did when I tried to answer. I didn't know what to do with any of it, so I stood up, walked over, and hugged him. His back was thin under my arms, but he held on. Something in me finally stopped bracing. The next days moved fast. School forms got filled out. Amber got pencils that didn't have teeth marks. I got a shirt that fit without sagging at the shoulders. Earl said, "Money comes and goes. Your name is what sticks." And he said it like it was a rule carved in metal. I believed him. At night I studied at his table while he fixed a lamp or sorted bolts into jars. He hummed old tunes with no words, and the house felt steady in a way I didn't know houses could. My brain kept asking why he cared, why now, why us. But the questions faded. The answer was simple enough to hold on to. Because he could, because we were his. And that night, after Amber fell asleep on the couch, I moved one of his heavy storage boxes closer to the wall to help him clear space. He watched me do it and nodded once, like we'd just started something worth finishing. Earl never told me to dream big. He just handed me a rag, showed me how to clean the glass door right, and said, "No streaks, that's your signature." That stuck more than any poster in a counselor's office ever did. I wasn't the smartest kid in class. I didn't get answers fast, and I didn't talk unless I had to. But I could outlast a chapter, I could show up, tired or not, and keep showing up the next day. I learned to raise my hand without my stomach turning, and that was a bigger win than most people knew. Amber lit up as soon as the pressure eased off her shoulders. She took to science like she'd been waiting on it, loved anything hands-on, said she wanted to wear scrubs one day and make the noise stop for somebody else. She started volunteering Saturdays at the free clinic downtown. She'd come back talking about checking pulses, calming nerves, watching blood pressure climb and fall like waves. She didn't flinch even when a patient threw up on her shoes, just rinsed them off, laughed, and kept helping. Earl kept the business steady, but small. Mops, gloves, PPE. Mostly local clinics, nursing homes, and schools. I stocked shelves, swept floors, rode along on deliveries, and sat quiet while he explained invoices and line items. What mattered most wasn't on the paper. It was in how he treated people. Fair, clear, never overpromised, always showed up. College felt out of reach until my guidance counselor shoved a packet in my hand and said, "You're going to fill this out and turn it in by Friday." I thought it was a waste of paper, but I filled it. Numbers made my head hurt, but I pushed through one at a time. I got the scholarship. Barely, but I got it. I enrolled in state school for business, lectures during the day, diner shift from 6 to midnight, weekend deliveries for Earl. Every dollar got stretched until it squeaked, but I stayed in. I knew what quitting looked like. I wasn't doing that again. At 22, I graduated. Earl clapped so hard during the ceremony that people turned around. I acted like I didn't see him wiping his eyes with the corner of his sleeve. Everyone else chased titles and salary bumps. I went right back to the shop. It had his fingerprints all over it, and I wanted mine to be worth something next to his. I started slow, reorganized inventory, cleaned out junk SKUs, fixed the pricing sheets so they made sense, didn't promise overnight shipping when we couldn't pull it off, just made promises we could keep, and then kept them. I visited clinics the big guys ignored, showed up with a wrench when a soap dispenser jammed, delivered pallets myself in the snow when the driver called out. Trust came slow, but it came. We landed a contract with the county schools. Modest money, but it meant something. Earl patted my shoulder and said, "Keep going, you're building right." Our crew grew from 4 to 9. We moved out of the cinder block unit and into a 2-bay warehouse off the frontage road. I signed the lease with clean hands and a clear name. A week later, Amber called me crying and laughing at once. She got into nursing school. First choice. I handed the phone to Earl, and he just said, "Told you, character first." That night, I stayed late at the warehouse and lined up the boxes by hand, one by one. No shortcuts, no noise, just the kind of work that lived up to the promise we made when he took us in. We were halfway through the county's restock order when Earl started losing weight. He'd wave it off with a joke or grunt, but Amber caught it first. She looked at the way he moved, how he leaned when he stood, how his coughs doubled up instead of going away. I saw it too, but I didn't want to say it out loud. One night I cornered him in the back room while he was breaking down boxes. He was out of breath. I said, "You're going to the clinic tomorrow." No arguments. He opened his mouth to push back, but I didn't move. Amber showed up at his side with her arms crossed, and that ended the fight. We took him to a clinic we supplied. The same soap and gloves we stocked lined their walls. The irony wasn't lost on me. The scan showed the truth. Stage 4. Spread too far to fight back. The doctor said months, like he hated the sound of it. I stared at the wall, focused on a dent in the paint, and kept my face from cracking. I shelved the expansion plans the next day, canceled the next pitch meeting. Amber put in for a leave of absence from her clinical rotations. We brought a recliner into the living room and angled it toward the window so the sun would catch him first thing in the morning. He didn't ask for much, just space to breathe and someone to laugh at his terrible jokes. We spent our evenings reading him the old newspapers he never threw away. He'd correct us when we skipped words, then tell the same story back with names flipped and dates wrong just to get Amber to roll her eyes. He laughed softer, but he still laughed. He called me kid more often, like the way he used to when he handed me a roll or left a coat on a stoop. One night, he grabbed my hand tighter than usual and said, "Live worthy." That's all he said. 3 syllables that felt like a pass down, like some men give a watch or a knife. I told him I would. He passed a few days after my 26th birthday. Quiet, no drama, just a long breath out while Amber and I sat on either side of him, holding on like we could stall time if we tried hard enough. The house felt too big without him, too clean, too still. The will was simple. I got the shop and the house. Amber got the savings account he'd built one quiet week at a time, mostly in cash, folded in envelopes marked with grocery dates and scribbled math. No fluff, just structure. I framed his photo and hung it over the old clipboard we'd use for first orders, the one with grease stains and duct tape along the edge. I looked at it one morning and said out loud, "I won't waste it." Didn't care who heard me. Grief didn't pause invoices, didn't slow down deliveries. I showed up with a knot in my chest and worked anyway. One day, a hospital called, new wing, needed safety stock, fast. I said yes before they finished the sentence. We packed it, labeled it right, and delivered ahead of schedule. Amber graduated that spring. She pinned her badge on herself, then called me with her voice shaking in a way I hadn't heard since we were kids. Only this time, it was joy. It was earned. That night, after the trucks rolled out and the warehouse went quiet, I stayed behind. I leaned against the loading dock door and listened to the soft hum of the walk-in coolers. That sound, low, steady, honest, felt like Earl. So I shut off the lights, locked the doors, and made sure they stayed closed tight behind me. The warehouse was calm that Tuesday. We'd just signed off on another school district contract, and I was walking back from the loading dock when my receptionist buzzed me. "Two visitors say they're family," she said. I stopped mid-step. I didn't have family who used that word kindly. I walked out front and saw them before they saw me. Grant Whitaker, older now, a little heavier, hair thinned out but still slicked back like he had something to sell. Lila wore some soft beige sweater like she thought it made her look warm. Neither of them belonged anywhere near that office. Grant smiled like he'd practiced it in the car. "Proud of you, son," he said, his voice thick with sugar. Lila sniffed and dabbed her dry eyes with a tissue she probably folded before walking in. "I always wanted what's best for you," she said, like it wasn't a lie. I didn't move, didn't blink. "What do you want?" I asked, because that's what this was. Not a visit, not a reunion, a pitch. Grant spread his hands like we were equals. "This place is built on family sweat. I gave you the name, the grit. All I'm saying is, maybe there's a portion owed, blood rights." That last line hit the ground like trash I wasn't picking up. I looked straight at him. "You want to talk blood? The man who fed me when you dumped us in the cold? That was family, not you. You get nothing." He started to talk again, but I cut him off. "If I have to repeat myself, it'll be to security." His hands shook. Maybe with anger, maybe something else. Lila's jaw clenched like she was about to say something worth regretting, but I pointed toward the glass doors. They left slow, like they thought dragging their feet would make me chase them. I didn't move until the doors shut behind them. 2 days later, Amber called me. She sounded annoyed, not shaken. That told me everything I needed to know before she even said a word. "They were waiting outside the hospital," she said. "Tried that same mess. Help your father, talk some sense into your brother." I felt my jaw lock. "You okay?" I told them to leave, or I'd get security. Told them you and Grandpa were my family. I don't need theirs. That landed, clean, sharp. She'd said it like it was truth, not a choice. And it settled something in me. The weak link they'd counted on wasn't weak anymore. That night, I called my lawyer, sent a formal cease and desist. We added no contact language, trespassing warnings, police involvement if they showed up again. I didn't post about it, didn't shout it to the world. But I knew they wouldn't go quietly. I knew they'd dig for another angle, so I beat them to it. I had a storage box in Earl's old office with file folders he never threw out. Bank slips, letters, a ledger with names and numbers I hadn't looked at in years. I opened it, flipped through until I saw Grant's name scrawled next to figures that didn't look like fatherly support. Earl always said, "You don't swing first, Caleb. You wait until daylight, and then you let people see for themselves." I stacked the files, clipped them, and slid the box into my car. It was time to turn the lights on. I didn't want drama. I wanted daylight. The week after I pulled the files, I called a firm I'd worked with once during a competitor dispute. Small outfit, sharp, fast, discreet. This time, I told them I needed every corner of my father and Lila's financial past examined. No guesswork, facts only. They nodded and got to work. Before I made anything public, I looped in my attorney and had him meet with the district attorney's office. I laid out everything, what I had, what I suspected. The DA's lead investigator listened for an hour, asked 4 questions, then said, "If you're telling the truth, we'll need to stay out of your way and let this land clean." Earl had saved everything, promissory notes with signatures, photocopies of checks that never cleared, a letter from Grant begging for one more chance, followed by nothing but silence. I filled in dates, names, locations, lined it all up. The firm found more: phony investment offers in 3 states, bounced checks from a construction scam, a fake charity account set up in Lila's name. 6 victims confirmed, all willing to talk, all still angry. I scheduled a press event under the banner of a new county safety supply partnership. I told my team I'd handle the questions and answers. They didn't know why my voice sounded like I was carrying bricks in my chest. The first part of the presentation went by the book: delivery stats, turnaround times, community focus. Then I clicked the remote. The screen behind me lit up with scanned documents. I told the room my story: being abandoned, being taken in, building from the bottom up. I explained who Earl was, what he gave, what he kept quiet about to protect us. Then I pointed to the screen and read one line straight from his old ledger: Grant Whitaker, $84,700, never repaid. "This isn't revenge," I said. My hand didn't shake. "It's record keeping, in daylight. For anyone who wants to see." Hands went up across the room. Questions came fast, some honest, some nosy. I answered the ones that mattered. The rest would answer themselves. That night, Grant tried calling into a local radio show to claim I doctored everything. I posted notarized copies on our website within the hour. Plain record, nothing added. 2 mornings later, my lawyer called. The financial crimes unit was ready. I handed them the full box, indexed, tabbed, with a thumb drive to match. The DA moved fast. Warrants went out across 2 states. Grant tried to say he was set up. Lila blamed him in one room and defended him in the next. They cracked fast. Not because they were innocent, because they were used to hiding behind people who didn't look twice. I wasn't that anymore. Victims lined up: an HVAC guy in Topeka, a cafeteria manager in Dayton, a janitor who'd lost a year's savings. Their stories fit together like pieces of a fence I didn't even know had been built. Arrests came down clean. Charges included fraud, wire fraud, and theft by deception. I stayed out of the courthouse. That wasn't where the real work was anymore. Months later, sentencing came. 10 years for Grant, 7 for Lila. Seized assets barely scratched what they owed. I didn't watch it live. I had orders to fill. Back at the office, I sat under Earl's photo and whispered, "The truth stood where everyone could see it." And after that, the phone quieted. Hallways didn't carry echoes the same way. The past stopped finding shadows. And I had one more job to do. A week after the sentencing, Amber and I drove out to the cemetery with white daisies wrapped in brown paper. The wind moved through the maples like it used to outside Earl's kitchen window. Steady. No rush. We stood in silence for a minute before I knelt and set the flowers at his stone. I told him we were okay, that the company had grown without forgetting where it started. Amber stood beside me, touched the marker, and said, "Thank you," like he was still sitting at the table. She'd just finished her residency. Nights, weekends, the worst shifts. They gave her all of it, and she didn't flinch. She met Marcus in the emergency room, a surgical fellow with calm hands and a quiet voice who looked you in the eye and meant what he said. I met him the day he brought her over for dinner. He shook my hand and listened more than he talked. I waited 6 months, then pulled him aside the night before the wedding. "She's my whole world," I told him. "If you don't know that yet, you need to." He looked me straight in the face and said, "I do, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving it." I believed him. Watching Amber walk down the aisle, smiling like she'd made it out the other side, didn't erase that gas station night. It didn't need to. It rewrote the ending I'd carried for years. That's healing, not erasing, but stepping into something better. Back at the warehouse, we started the Whitaker Fund. Scholarships, small grants, paid internships for kids who just need a way across when the water's cold. We used his name on purpose. It wasn't a brand move. It was a promise, kept in print. Every spring, I stand in front of the staff, new hires, old-timers, interns, and I tell the truth. About showing up. About the line between pride and stubborn. About protecting your name like it's the only thing no one can take unless you hand it to them. The business kept growing. Bigger contracts, longer routes. But we didn't mess with the core. We deliver what we say, when we say. We answer the phone. We wear our name like Earl taught us to, on our chest, stitched clean. My father and Lila don't take up space in my head. When they do, it's like glancing at an old warning label, ugly but useful, nothing more. If there's any payback, it's this. Amber laughing in a kitchen full of light. Our trucks pulling out before the sun cracks the sky. And Earl's photo looking down over the first clipboard we ever used, like he knew exactly where this was headed. People like to call success a high-floor view. They're wrong. The real view is a coat thrown over 2 kids on a freezing night, and all the small, stubborn choices that came after. I'm not a hero. I'm a man who kept a promise. And I kept the switch up. Before you head out. Mind if I ask you something? Now, what would facing your past in daylight look like for you? Comment below. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Even something as simple as great story means a lot to me.